Imagine why. Good morning. My name is Teresa Gallagher, come from Letterkenny in County Donegal, Tír. Thank you very much for allowing me to be with you today. I want to reflect on two journeys. One of them is personal and one of them is from the scriptures. Both involve listening, seeing and responding with our ears, our eyes and our heart in our journey through life. And both stories hopefully will give us a heightened appreciation of the meaning and the importance of listening, seeing and responding. As a child, I spent many happy summers up in Bleak, County Fermanagh, with my grandmother and my Uncle Mick and his Labrador Ben. Mick the Labrador and myself regularly went out in the boat to fish on Lough Erne, which was nearby. We'd walk past that beautiful, distinguished Bleak pottery building, walk over the bridge and down to Uncle Mick's wee boat. It was waiting there for us at the lake's edge. It was always very special. And as we'd push the boat out into the calm blue waters of Lough Erne, Ben, the dog, was already swimming alongside the side of the boat, as much as to say to us, "Come on, get on with it," and off we'd go. I'd sit there, basking in the beauty all around me, listening to the birds, listening to the sound of the wind in the reeds, stroking Ben occasionally alongside the boat, and feeling the fresh, cool breeze on my face. I loved listening to the lapping of the water, that relaxing rhythmic sound of the web and flow of the oars that kept bringing us further out into the deep. I'd listen and I'd watch for the fish jumping, and I would shout as loud in a loud whisper to Uncle Mick, because you couldn't shout really. And I'd point to the spot where the ripples were, as if he didn't see them himself. I always felt very involved in the fishing, and he'd give me a nod of the head in acknowledgement. It was a timelessness about the whole thing. Beautiful experience. But I need to tell you, although I love the sea, the lakes, the rivers, as an adult, I'm actually afraid of water. And in my many efforts to swim, I can turn a calm pool into an unruly tsunami, and I'm not joking. Even after several swimming lessons, all the essential equipment, and swimming coaches, too many to count, my fear of letting go prevents me from swimming. Fear stops me every time. I can do nothing because I'm afraid. I can't get rid of this fear. Yet, out yonder in the middle of Lough Erne, in a wee small boat, I never even entertained fear. I trusted Uncle Mick. I felt very happy, safe and secure and special. The reassuring sleight of his head and a strong, gentle figure always assured me that all was well back then and I was safe to be with him. My uncle disabled my fear and freed me of it. And now I'm taking you on a second journey, and the man this time is Jesus. The scene is Lake Gennesareth. Jesus is there on the bank, and he's teaching a huge crowd of people, and they're pushing to get closer to him. And just then, Jesus noticed an empty boat at the edge of the lake, and the fishermen had got out, and they were busy washing their nets. And Jesus, he did a very practical thing. He got into the empty boat. It was Simon's. And he said to Simon to push out the boat from the shore. And Jesus sat down in the boat and he continued his teaching. And everyone could see him and he could see everyone. When he'd finished teaching, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets." Simon thought, "This isn't a very good idea. What he's asking me to do doesn't make sense." So he thought he'd let Jesus know. And he said, "Master, we've been out all night. We're exhausted. And on top of all that, we've caught nothing. Nada. But then he thought twice, because he'd listened, and he said, "Because you say so, Lord, I will let down the nets." And he'd hardly done this when he netted such a huge catch that the nets began to break. And Simon called on the other boat to help out, and they did. And they filled the two boats to sinking point. At this point, Simon and his partners were completely overcome by the massive catch. Simon fell on his knees and he said to Jesus, "Leave me, Lord. I am a sinful man." But Jesus didn't leave him. And Jesus didn't confirm he was a sinful man. He didn't respond at all to Simon's poor sense of himself. Jesus ignored his self-depreciation and instead said to him, "Do not be afraid, Simon. Do not be afraid. From now on, it is people you will catch." And they left their boats and they followed Jesus. May each one of us have the courage to listen, see, and respond to those around us in these strange and difficult times. Remember, Jesus was not interested in Simon telling him he was a sinner. Jesus was not interested in leaving Simon. Jesus, in fact, ignored his remarks. And instead, all he asked Simon to do was to trust in him and not to be afraid. Simon took this on board, and he was empowered to follow Jesus. And Jesus is the same to each one of us today. He asks us to trust him, even when things are difficult and we don't understand what's happening. Jesus says to each one of us on our journey through life, "Fear not. Do not be afraid. Na be agla ort. I am with you always. I am always with you. Come, follow me." Banach J ort, agus go seal, seer o agla, lam de gra, agus de kroga, agus gojaw. And may the blessings of God be upon you. May you be free from your fear and have a life full of love and strength forever. Thank you, Teresa.